You just got to have the activity, okay? That's what it is, so overall, when it really comes right down to it. So that's what I'm going to emphasize this afternoon. But I wanted to give you a little bit of a background of where I came from. And so some of this is going to be about me, and I'm going to go through it somewhat quickly. I'm going to stand down here, and I hope that's okay. I'm going to put this here because I'll punch it once in a while to make sure I know when I'm supposed to quit. Matter of fact, I don't even know when I'm supposed to quit. I think it's 2:30, right?
When you're done.
No, does it say 2:30, John? Okay, we'll try to work with that. Go forever? Okay. Becoming a master prospector. So I want to tell you just a little bit about this. I'm Merlyn Beeman. It's like a bank thing. You're called the executive vice president. You don't get paid anymore, but you have a name, okay? But it works real well in foreign countries. Doesn't mean so much here in the United States. Okay. All righty. Well, what I want to do is tell you a little bit about this. My grandparents, obviously, were much older than I am, and they lived on a farm. Sometimes if they get a broken window, something like you see up here like this, they had windows like that in their house. I don't know if you remember that. Those of you that are my age or close to it, you probably had people in your family that lived in houses like that. The bathroom was down that path, that type of thing. And maybe a window would get broken. Well, what would they do with it? There wasn't a whole lot they could do with it. You couldn't just run down to the hardware store or go to Ace Hardware or Lowe's or Home Depot or something like that and get another window and replace it at that time. So you kind of wait till you could get to town someday and maybe get a window pane and get that fixed in there because they're broken. So meanwhile, you'd put something in it, like maybe a piece of cardboard or something like that to fill it in. Well, that kind of was a substitute, okay? I'm not a substitute today. I was asked to speak here. But you may think I'm a pain before this is over. Okay? 3 thoughts today. Number 1, my start with LMI, and I'm going to give you a little bit of background there, and that's what I was talking about. By the way, I'll let you know that these lights are real bright. I'm looking at you. I'm looking this way, but I can't see you, okay? I had lots of prospects when I started, okay? Then I decided to move my business, and I had no prospects when I moved my business to the new location, okay? So I want to end by saying it's really not that difficult. It's just simply activity. And that's what I want you to think, and hopefully you will think that when we end here today. So let me give you a quick rundown of me, Merlyn Beeman, background, so forth, okay? So to speak, has nothing to do with prospecting, but it lays the groundwork for who I am, where I came from, and that type of thing. Just a quick overview. I start with LMI, more than that actually. I was born in Eldora, Iowa. Who else is from Iowa here? Anybody from Iowa? Hey, way to go, Lisa. I knew we'd get something out of that, okay? I was born in Eldora, Iowa. I actually grew up in Missouri, which is just south of Iowa, as you can see there, if you can see the little red star on there. And I graduated from high school in 1961. Yay, way to go, right? Okay. I got married in 1962. Some of you have met my wife. Those of you that haven't, you'll have to wait until another time, okay? I lost her 9 years ago today. I went to college in 1960. I shouldn't have said that. Actually, I forgot I was going to be doing this on April the 1st, okay? So, April Fool's Day, right? I went to college in 1961, 1965 in St. Louis, Missouri. Graduated there. And then we became missionaries in Mexico from 1966 to 1978. We actually ended up working in a children's home with orphaned and abandoned Mexican children. And that's where we were. And this was kind of a little beginning of our home. And then it kind of grew a little bit and got a little bit bigger, and there was more kids. And you can see a bigger house in the background. It still exists today. From there we left and we came back to the United States, but we grew our family in Mexico. Some of those children are adopted. You might guess that this one right here is probably not adopted. The others, well, I'll take it back. He's not adopted, that was not adopted, and there's another one there. That was not adopted. All the others are adopted. We have 5 adopted and 3 of our own. No, I'll take it back. We have 7 adopted and 1 of our own. 2 we adopted in Missouri, 5 we adopted in Mexico by means of the children's home. Okay, so we came back to the United States, And I don't know if you know anything about being a missionary, but when you're in Mexico, for example, and you're a missionary, you don't have a whole lot. We had everything we had probably in a couple of cardboard boxes. And we came back home. You know, we always got the thin ties when you were wearing wide ties, and we always got the wide ties when you were wearing thin ties. So that was kind of the thing like that. My wife got a job at the Holiday Inn in Laredo, Texas. And as an innkeeper, not innkeeper, but a housekeeper, rather. She was a housekeeper there. And I worked there for a while at that. And they looked at me and said, what are you going to do? You know, because now they knew us, and I was there too. And they said, we need a maintenance man, so I worked there as a maintenance man. But I went from a maintenance man, when I left there, I was a general manager, just to give you an idea. And that wasn't very long, but nonetheless. I really didn't want to work in the hotel business. I left the hotel business and went into law enforcement. So as you can see there, I was a cop for in the state of Texas. I actually ended up putting in about 20 years in the police work. However, part of it was full-time. And then when I came to LMI, in the small town where I live, I became a quote-unquote reserve officer, and I was a police officer up until 2000, and quit nearly 16 years ago, now from being a police officer. And then from law enforcement, I went into LMI. Didn't make enough money to support 8 kids, being a police officer. My goal, and I became a police officer, I said, you know what, I want to be the chief of police someday. So I looked back at it and I said, you know, I was a goal setter. I didn't realize it as much, but I was a goal setter. I said, I'd like to be the chief of police here someday, you know, that type of thing. And then LMI came along. Well, I wasn't making enough money, and there was a business in town that made limousines, stretch limos, okay? They made part of it on the USA side, because we were in Laredo, Texas, and it's right on the Mexican border. And on the other side, they'd finish them up, and then they'd come back over and do the final touches, and I don't know what they call it, a maquiladora is what they call it, but I don't know what you call it in English. And it goes back and forth to do that. And I delivered limousines. I worked 4 days on and 4 days off as a police officer. And then I'd go home and sleep, and then I'd go jump in a limousine and drive it to New York City or Beverly Hills or New Orleans or someplace and deliver that limousine. Because the guy that owned the limousine company said he liked to have somebody that could carry a gun deliver his limos. So, and he liked to have them driven, not pulled on a trailer because it was stretched. They wanted to make sure the drive shaft worked and all that kind of stuff. And so I did that for extra money to support my family. When I usually I drove a car, long story short, I drove a car to New York City, got on a plane, came back, and at that time they used to give out newspapers on American Airlines. They don't do that anymore. But, and I got a Wall Street Journal. And I was reading the Wall Street Journal and opened it up, and there was this ad about this company called Leadership Management. Well, voila, okay, here I am. I responded. We ended up going to Waco, Texas, where we lived for 2 years, and I started working with LMI. But here's the story. Came to Waco, and they said, okay, here's this piece of paper. We need 200 names on this list, okay? You ever heard that before? Anybody ever heard that? Okay. I said, I don't even know 200 people. I mean, you have got to be kidding, okay? Interstate 35 connects Waco, Texas to Laredo, Texas. Laredo, Texas is right on the border. They say it ends there. I don't know if up in International Falls they say it ends there or begins there. I mean, it begins in Laredo, Texas is what we say. It ends in International Falls up on the Canadian border. Interstate 35, we were on it driving home, and before we got home, 330 miles later, we had more than 200 names on our list. My wife was with me, okay? Interesting. I didn't think I even knew that many people. And we had over 200 names on our list. So I had lots of people that I knew that I could make contact with in working this business in Laredo, Texas. And so I had asked the police department for a 90-day leave of absence, which I could do, which was part of the contract. And guess what? I never went back, okay, to the police department. I focused on small to medium-sized businesses, okay, small to medium enterprises, okay? And I think overall, at least in my opinion, that is the market of LMI. Do we work with big companies? Sure, some of you have worked with big companies. But hey, credit union, okay? Small to medium-sized businesses, okay? For example, some of my clients, a gun dealer, okay? One of my fellow police officers had a federal gun license here in the United States. For some of you from foreign, if you're from some of the foreign countries, that may not make a lot of sense to you. But he was a gun dealer. He had a business of his own. He needed what we have at LMI. He was a client. A funeral home. I joined the Kiwanis Club. Okay. Hey, people are just dying to get into these places. Say it again.
I see the next one is gardening.
Yeah, there you go. I joined the Kiwanis Club, which is like a Rotary or like the Lions Club or something like that. It's an organization that focuses on helping youth and young people. And this funeral director that owned a funeral home was one of the people that was also involved in that. Got an appointment with him. Went for the presentation. And at that time, I don't know if some of you may be old enough to remember this. Some of you, I think, are. But at that time, this was 1980, of course, when I'm coming into the LMI and going into the business. And we used to sell a program, deliver the program. Okay, here's your program. Okay, good luck. That type of thing. Well, we stopped that. Fortunately, I got in on the tail end of that type of thing when we started facilitation really right at that time. And I got into facilitation, big difference in facilitation. But nonetheless, I went in for this presentation, and we used to take the programs in with us and show them. That was part of what we did. Don't recommend that anymore, actually, okay? But I used to take in. Now, here was my deal. I took my EPL program with me because I didn't want to open up a new one and take a chance on messing it up, and not being able to deliver it to a client, that type of thing. So I had my program was on the table, and I would show appropriate parts of it as needed because it was my program, my plan of action had things in it and so forth. So I'm going through the presentation. The guy reaches over and he pulls over my plan of action. He opens it up and he says, this is yours, right? You're using this thing. And I said, well, yeah, you're looking at it, a lot of things that are in it. And he said, my son and I will both do it. Okay? So I work with a funeral home, a small funeral home, okay? I worked with a therapist. I can't even remember what type of therapist he was. I just know that we used his facility for facilitation at one time, and he had all these nice chairs to sit in. And they were kind of like leather recliners almost. We were all sitting around in this group doing the facilitation in the nice chairs that he had. I worked with a dentist. And the dentist had a goal to increase his business. Just a small dentist in Laredo, Texas. I worked with the oil field businesses. Laredo, Texas is in an oil area, big oil area. And it's good that I had other clients because right at that 81, 82 period of time is when, boom, oil went down again. And you could buy gas for $1 a gallon or whatever it was at that time. And they had what we called the drive-through places where people could go through the pawn shops. They had like drive-through windows. You could go through and sell your Rolex watch to the pawn shop because they just, all of a sudden they had a lot of money and a lot of training, which was good for me. And then all of a sudden that quit. So I was with other business. That's just to give you an idea, all basically small businesses. Now, my center of influence in that town was my aunt. And that's why we went to Laredo, Texas, actually, because I had an aunt living there. And so I bought property from her, and we built a house there, and that's what it was. But my aunt, who's my aunt? I mean, when you think of a center of influence, what do you think of? Who do you think of?
Businessman.
Say it again?
A businessman. A businessman.
A businessman, someone like that. What did my aunt do? She was a school teacher. She wasn't an old maid school teacher. She's actually married my uncle, okay, who was in the military in Laredo, Texas. He was in the cavalry when they actually had horses, okay? Not tanks. And they got married. Met her there and got married. And they were driving back to Iowa to introduce them to my grandma and grandpa to his dad, okay? In Oklahoma, they came across an accident. He got out to help, stepped on a live wire, electrocuted. My aunt never married again after that. She lived to be 98 years old. She taught in the Laredo school system for over 50 years. She knew every businessman, their son or grandson in Laredo, Texas, a town of just slightly less than 100,000 people at that time. Today it's over 300,000. It's grown quite a bit. Laredo, Texas, approximately 80% at that time, I don't know today, to tell you the truth, but about 80% Hispanic and about 20% whatever else. The Laredo Police Department, for example, had 2 people on it that were not Hispanic. Guess who one of them was? Okay. The other one was, guess who? Guess what? What do you think he was?
Chief of police?
You two. No, the other person that was not Hispanic and not white. What was he? Where are you from? Where do you work? He was Japanese.
No.
Yeah, he was Japanese. Can you believe it? It was me, the gringo, and him, the Japanese, and the rest of them were all basically Mexican. Okay? Okay? So it was interesting. But now here's the bad thing about it. I was known as the honest cop. Okay? My aunt gave me a lot of referrals. I didn't realize it till one day she asked me, she said, what do you do? And I told her. She said, oh, you ought to go see so-and-so. I went to see him, he bought. I thought, this might be something here. I went back and talked to my aunt. She gave me referrals all over the place, you know, really some good referrals. My initial 200 led to more, but through referrals. But guess what? I had to learn to ask. In Laredo, Texas, when I first started, I didn't have that big need that I had to ask a lot because I knew a lot of people, okay, at that time. But I didn't need to do that. But then after I started using up those initial 200, I started asking and asking. My aunt helped me, had different people helping me, had to learn to ask. Okay, I moved. My wife and I decided that we didn't want to live in Laredo, Texas. She didn't like the heat. And so we decided to move back to Missouri, where we're originally from. Okay, she's from Missouri. I grew up in Missouri. I was born in Iowa. Yay, Lisa, okay. And so we decided to move to Missouri. We decided we did not want to work or live in a big town. St. Louis, Missouri, Kansas City, Missouri, if you're familiar with the geography of the 2 largest cities. We chose Springfield, Missouri, southwest corner of Missouri, okay? And it is a town of it was at that time, interestingly enough, of slightly less than 100,000 people. Almost exactly the same size as Laredo, Texas. Fabulous market, fabulous market. The difference? Laredo, Texas, 80% Hispanic, 20% otherwise. This town, 98% white, 2% otherwise, okay? We feared for our kids, okay, that they wouldn't be accepted in schools and so forth because we had 5 Mexican adopted children. And we thought, boy, this might be tough. Guess what? Soccer was coming in the United States. They had soccer teams in Springfield, Missouri. Guess what? Our kids played soccer. They grew up with soccer balls, okay? And they were fantastically accepted, okay? They helped to coach soccer teams and all that kind of thing. Again, it kind of helped in that way. But I really had no prospect. We knew nobody in Springfield, Missouri, to our knowledge. I'm not from there. I'm from this area over here. That's where I grew up. That's where my wife grew up, okay? I'm not from this area here. And so we're coming into town and saying, again, population almost 100,000. So let's link this activity thing. And here's the story I want to tell you about working LMI, okay? I went to a Holiday Inn, not to get a job, but this was right on the interstate highway. It was right on a main thoroughfare, main street in Springfield, Missouri. If any of you have ever been there and know what it's called, Glenstone. That's the Holiday Inn back in 1982, okay, when we moved there. I went into that Holiday Inn and I made arrangements for a meeting room. 6 weeks later, I kicked off my first showcase class in that meeting room, okay? What did I do? I parked my car in that parking lot. That's not my car, it's just a picture of the place. But I parked my car in that parking lot, but it was in a business area, and I just took off and started walking, okay? I was just going up and down the street, all over the place, door to door to door to door to door, business to business to business to business, 100% cold calling. I had nothing else to do. I didn't know anybody in that town, okay? We got there, we had a place to live, and I started my business at that point. Now, this obviously is a picture of a page from my time. This happens to be May the 2nd. I didn't have a my time from 1982. So I don't even think we had my time in 1982. But so what I did was I put these little stickers on here, and I wanted to give you an idea of what I did. I did this in Laredo, and I did it in Springfield, and when I was in the field. Every day in my calendar, I blocked off 3 spots minimum for appointments, okay? 3 spots minimum for appointments. This shows my 3 spots. The first one here, see appointment number 1 right there? Well, here, let me do this. I've got this all set up here. Sales training, let me tell you this first. I started recruiting right away also. I had people in Laredo, and now I wanted to continue and build a team here, so I started recruiting. I ran an ad, did some things like that. I set aside, this is Monday, as you can see on here, it's Monday, May the 2nd. Every Monday morning, I had training for myself or for my sales associates. If I had sales associates, otherwise I was by myself, okay? If I was by myself, I was at home, and I did my training there. But if I had sales associates, we met at a local restaurant, which had a little meeting room in the back. If my sales associates sold, I would buy their breakfast. If they didn't, they'd buy their own breakfast if they wanted to have breakfast, okay? We also gave out commission checks at that same time. Every week they got their commission checks. And then we would leave, and the goal was for us to have appointments. Well, let's see, let's come back. I learned to block my calendar, which I pushed the wrong one. Okay, so note appointments here. You'll see the appointments here, right here, here, and here, okay? But here I'll point them out to you. Appointment number 1, appointment number 2, and appointment number 3, okay? On this particular day, every day I had 3 appointments blocked out. My first appointment was 10 o'clock in the morning. My second one was 1:30 in the afternoon. My third one was 3 o'clock in the afternoon. It may work for you. It worked well for me because these are small towns, less than 100,000 people. I could be almost anywhere in Laredo, Texas, or in Springfield, Missouri in less than 15 minutes. No problem at all. You know, if the traffic was blocked here, I just turn, go around the block and go around. It's just that kind of a town. You can just go anywhere you want to quickly, okay? You just knew how to get around. No big city stuff. If you're in a big city, you may not be able to do that, okay? I had an appointment blocked on that first one there from 10 in the morning to, actually that's, 10 o'clock in the morning to 11:30, okay? An hour and a half. I didn't take an hour and a half for an appointment. That allowed for me 15 minutes to get there, 15 minutes to get away and get to the next one if I needed to. And if it was blocked, if it was back to back with this, like here, it gave me even a half an hour there. It allowed an hour for the appointment, and I usually only ask for 20 minutes or so, okay? So if it took an hour, fine. If it was less, which usually is what it did, I had plenty of time to do that, okay? I had 3 slots every day, Monday through Friday. Notice this is Thursday. I had a 4th slot. I discovered in my time in the field that there were some people at some times that said, I really can't meet with you during the business day, but could you catch me right after work or something like that? So I had an appointment time in my calendar already set up for Thursdays at 5:30 in the afternoon, okay? And on Thursdays, I would meet with somebody at 5:30 and say, well, hey, I've got an available time at 5:30. How would that be on Thursday, you know? And it was just part of my calendar system, part of who I was and what I was doing at that time. So I think this is one of the important parts of what I wanted to say to you today is you've got to set up that time picture, so to speak, and say, this is what I'm going to do. Now, did I have 3 appointments or 4 appointments every day? No, okay? My goal was to set a couple every day. I just had different spots where I could put them, okay? I could put one at 10, I could put one at 1:30, I could put one at 3 o'clock. On Thursday, I could put one at 5:30, okay? Those were times that I kept open for those appointments. My goal was to get 2 every day. My goal was to get 10 scheduled interviews every week. Did I have 10 scheduled interviews every week? What do you think? No, I didn't, okay? Why? Vince?
Some canceled.
Some canceled, yeah. I mean, like the parakeet died, whatever it was, okay? You never know. They forgot. Something seriously really did come up, okay? You know, a big problem in the company or this or that, whatever. And so I'd usually end up with somewhere in the area of 8-point-something interviews every week, okay? Because I had them scheduled. And those that didn't make it, we'd usually get those rescheduled, okay? So we just maybe move it forward a week or two or whatever it happened to be. So that's, and my goal was then, all I needed to do was meet enough people, get enough appointments set, so I'd have my 2 appointments every day set up. Okay? Does that make sense so far? Okay?
Yep.
It's activity, folks. It wasn't that hard. Really wasn't that hard. Okay? Now, some of my clients in Springfield, Missouri, Midas Muffler. If you live here in the United States, have you ever heard of Midas Muffler? Okay? Sure, you probably have. It's a cold call. I just went in, said hi. And I'll show you how I did that here in just a little bit, okay? And this guy, Mr. Newald, became a client. It's a muffler place, you know, but they do lots of things. They work on mufflers, they do brakes, they do tune-ups, they do whatever, okay? Different things like that. Was a client. Here's an interesting one. I'm at the Holiday Inn, I'm walking down the street. I go into this little office complex. I walk into here and there's this thing called the American Milking Shorthorn Society. Oh, great potential client, right? Cows. Okay. Yeah, there you go. Okay. Yeah, the breed that fills every need, like it says here. Right. Okay. Hey, whatever. Okay. So I went in and I asked for an appointment. I got an appointment. Okay. Now I'll come to that and talk about it a little bit later. He became my client. Notice that the Holiday Inn was on Glenstone. This is one of the businesses that's on South Glenstone in Springfield, Missouri. Okay. Jenkins Diesel Power. They worked with diesel engines, whether it was truck, industrial, marine, whatever it was. This happened to be a client that I met at church. My wife and I, obviously having been missionaries, that type of thing, we immediately got active in a church. And this was a person I met in church, okay? Art Olson, he's a stockbroker. I thought, hey, why not go to a stockbroker? At that time, we had, how many of you know Richard Hunter? Or have heard of Richard Hunter? Those of you, the old timers, have heard about or met Richard Hunter. And I said, hey, he's working with stockbrokers. Why not? Go in and see a stockbroker. He became a client, okay? These are cards. If you'll notice, I've got, see the staple mark up in the corner? I took them off my cards. I'll show you the box here in a minute, where I've got nearly 400. I went into a town, had no prospects at all, and I walked away with nearly 400 in my box I hadn't even contacted yet, okay? So it was an interesting one there. Don Smiley, it was a CPA firm. It was Don Smiley's firm, but Kurt Morgan was one of the CPAs that worked there. He became my client, okay? In a CPA business. Wendell Steele with the Square D Company, which is a electrical products company in the United States. Nothing big here. He's just an executive field engineer for the local office there in the small town. I didn't work, quote unquote, with Square D, and it's a humongous company across the country. I worked with him in that location, okay? The Springfield Speech and Hearing Center. This was a horrible client. And I'll tell you why. Yeah, what? Okay. And I'll tell you why. He became a client, went through the program. My daughter married his son. I lost my daughter in Springfield, Missouri. Now she lives in Joplin, which is just down the road, about 70 miles. But, so I always tell him right now, I said, man, you stole my daughter, you know? So now my daughter lives hundreds of miles away from me up there. But that's how good of a client he became. He was a very close friend, okay? And but you don't know, right? Okay? See, I worked with Cisco. Now, if you live in the United States, you've probably heard of Cisco before. When I go out to eat most of the time in Waco, Texas, to the restaurants, I call most of the restaurants Cisco restaurants because Cisco delivers the food to them. That's what it is, kind of a food service type thing. They deliver the food, and so you've got the salt, the pepper, the thing, even your chicken fried steak, whatever. It all comes from Cisco, and they just kind of warm it up and slap it on the table, and it's the same all around town. Their pies are horrible and all their stuff, but anyway, it's a multi-million-dollar company selling lousy food. But this fellow became a client, okay? And again, you'll notice the address on there is Glenstone. I just walked in the door, cold call, became a client. He participated in that first class up at the Holiday Inn at the corner of Interstate 44 and Glenstone, South Glenstone, in Springfield, Missouri. Well, now this is an interesting one here. Webster Companies, you can see it's a Phillips 66 dealership. Jack Webster III, president of the company. I did not, here was my typical rule. I went out, and I was on, eventually I got to the point where I was making phone calls, of course, and my goal was 2 appointments every day, 5 days a week, okay? And maximum was 10, is what I wanted to have set up, okay? And if today, for example, was Friday, which today is Friday, I was making sure that I had Monday set up and Tuesday set up, okay? So I'm working on that now. Usually my Monday, the next day was set up and I'm working on the third day. I went to a conference like this once and there was some fellow up there, I don't even remember who it was now, that said he works 1 week ahead of time. And so actually I changed later and I was working on Friday, I'm working for next Friday. On Monday, I'm working for next Monday, and I always had 2 appointments already set up for all those days ahead of time. So I was working on that. But when I went to this fellow, I didn't have my appointment set up for the second day away. For 2 days away, I was still lacking 1 appointment. I was out there cold calling. It was 9 o'clock at night. And I said, I'm not going home until I get that appointment set, okay? This company owned convenience stores. If you're in the United States, you know what those are. In most countries now, you know what they are too. Convenience stores around the world now, where you go in and get gasoline, you can go in and get milk and food and whatever, lots of things like that. I stopped at a convenience store. Now, a convenience store at 9 o'clock at night, you're not likely to find too many decision makers there, okay? But I went in, and I asked the fellow that was working there, I said, could you, got to talking with him. I said, tell me who the decision maker is, who's the owner and so forth, that type of thing. He said he just pulled up outside. He was checking his properties, going around checking his properties. He was out working too at 9 o'clock at night. I said, oh, well, guess what? Jack gave me an appointment, okay? And he was a part of my class. And then we went in-house with Phillips 66 dealer in Springfield, Missouri, who was a distributor for the gasoline and oil products for all of southwest Missouri, all of southeast Kansas, and all of northeast Oklahoma, which is right along in that overall area right there. It was a pretty big operation overall, but in the overall home office, he didn't have a lot of people. He had people out in these other locations, but we did in-house work there with that company. I got that appointment at about 9 o'clock at night at a convenience store because he happened to drive up, and because I wasn't going to go home till I had that next appointment set up that I wanted to have, okay? That's what I'm saying, you've got to have the activity. You can't give up because it's 5 o'clock in the afternoon and say, well, I just won't have appointments on next Tuesday, for example, from today. No, I said, I'm going to have it. I've got to find it. There's somebody out here. I'll find them. And I did. Didn't do that very often, didn't have to do that very often, but just to give you an idea on that. Those are some of the prospects, or the clients that I had. Notice they're all small. Some of them represent major businesses, okay, multi-million-dollar great big businesses, but I was just working with the small unit locally, okay? I could say, yes, I work with Phillips 66, and LMI's worked with Phillips 66, but no, I worked with the guy that gets his gas from them and distributes it there on a local basis. So in the beginning, that's what I did. And here, I wanted to share with you just a little bit. Now, have you ever seen that before? Something like that? What does that say? Well, the Merlyn Beeman part. Have you ever seen that part there? It says, my company specializes in measurable improvement in performance, okay? With people in companies just like yours. And I've dropped by to let you know about our executive showcase that will begin at the Holiday Inn, and I might add something about up on North Glenstone, okay? And we're in a select group of management people who, like yourself, are going to explore ways to improve productivity and profits in their organizations, okay? And I would go in and I would have my, actually I didn't have a my time at that time. We're using, what did we use that time? Sam, tell me what we used. Daytimers, okay. I had a daytimer at that time. And, but it was the same process, and I had my time blocked out there. And I would go in, and I'd hand them a business card, and I'd say, hi. First I'd go in and try to find out who it was. If it looked like, if it was the cow place, for example, and there was a lady there at the front, I can still remember that. And I said, is the president around or the owner or what, who's kind of runs the place here, you know, that type of thing. And she told me, okay? I said, is he available? Okay. And I'd go in and I'd hand him my business card and said, hi, I'm Merlyn Beeman. My company specializes in measurable improvement in performance with people, you know, just like you, okay, and companies just like yours. And I've dropped by to let you know about our executive showcase that will begin soon up at the Holiday Inn there on North Glenstone, where a select group of management level people, like yourself, okay, are going to get together to explore ways to improve productivity and profits in their organization. Then, I would say I would like to ask you for about 20 minutes of your time to discuss with you the potential benefits that you might gain by joining this group. I have available, for example, if I were doing it today, I don't get home till Monday, I would say I have available Tuesday morning at 10 o'clock, or would Wednesday afternoon at 1:30 be best for you? And I just did that over and over and over and over and over again. Now, I ask for referrals. Every time I ask for referrals, okay? Because I already learned to do that. That's what I said before. I said I had to learn to ask. My marketing director at the home office, which is kind of like what Sam and I are in the sense at the home office, what we call marketing directors. We're actually executive vice presidents now. And, but what my marketing director at that time when I was in the radio said, you got to start asking for referrals. And I said to him, I said, hey, if I ask for a referral at the end of a sale, I'm going to lose the sale. They think I'm only interested in money. You know, just I'm not interested in them and really helping them out. I said, okay, if I do it and I lose the sale, it's your fault, not mine. And guess what? I asked for referrals. And guess what? I started getting referrals, okay? I'm going down Glenstone here, and I go into this office, and here's a fella. His name is John Pennell. And John gave me an appointment. I went back. By the way, when I walked in, I did not take the appointment at that time, okay? No appointments at that moment. So I didn't want to walk in and, you know, they say, oh, well, I really don't have 20 minutes or whatever. It was like Tuesday at 10 o'clock in the morning or Wednesday at 1:30, okay? I don't have the time right now, I appreciate it. Some people would even say, oh, well, come on in. So I'm really sorry I don't have the time right now, but I do have this time or that time, which would be better for you, you know, that type of thing, okay? And because I found that I did take a couple of those, and you found that, well, they weren't really ready, and then you end up with a mess, and you don't get to have your presentation, and you expect. So anyway, John Pennell was one of my cold calls. Went through the presentation with him. He didn't buy. I said, John, maybe you know some people that might be interested. He said, golly, I don't know. I just don't really know a lot of people. You know, I don't know what to say. You know, that type of thing. You know, you've probably heard something like that before. Well, this was after the interview, after I'd gone back and we had the interview with him. John Pennell was born in Springfield, Missouri, okay? John Pennell went to school in Springfield, Missouri, okay? John Pennell went to the university, there's University of Missouri in Springfield, Missouri, okay? And John, you're telling me you don't know anybody in Springfield, Missouri, okay? And he had a Rolodex. Remember what a Rolodex is on his desk? I said, John, would there be anybody that you might be able to give me a name out of your Rolodex? He said, Merlyn, that's a great idea. I left there with 47 names. 47. I started calling on those people. And they bought. Not all 47, but a great amount of them bought. I went back to John and I said, John, thank you very much. You have been a tremendous help to starting my business here in Springfield, Missouri. He said, they did? I said, yes, they did. He said, that's wonderful. Almost weekly after that, I met with John either for breakfast or for lunch, and he almost always came with another referral. To this day, we still correspond with each other. We still exchange Christmas cards. I might see them when I'm back in that part of the country again, going back to see my daughter, for example. When my daughter got married, I sent him an invitation. John immediately called me, and I was living in Waco at the time, okay? And he called me, he said, hey, you're going to come back for the wedding, obviously. He said, do you need a place to stay? You know, that type of thing. We've been in his home, he's been in our home, tremendous center of influence, really helped me to get the business started. Cold call, walking down the street, just going in and out, in and out, in and out, in and out, okay? Folks, It just takes activity. Did I like it? You know, it really turned into be kind of fun. You know, it wasn't that big of a deal after a while. I didn't like it in the beginning. No, I didn't like it. And it was like, oh man, you know, I got to support my family. Here I am. I don't know anybody, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But it worked. Statistically speaking, you're going to talk to about 20 of those people, give or take, and one of them will give you an appointment. All I need to do was talk to 40 people. All I need to do was go in and out of 40 businesses, and I knew I'd have my 2. You know what really happened? It didn't really take 40 to get my 2 appointments set up. It really didn't take it. It just worked out better than that. So what I want to share with you is you can do this thing, okay? And I hope that my little brief example will have given you a little bit of an idea, and I'm a little bit over time, Sam, sorry, but I want you to hear this.
After being cut from his high school basketball team, he went home, locked himself in his room, and cried. He wasn't able to speak until he was almost 4 years old, and his teachers said he would never amount to much. Was demoted from her job as a news anchor because she wasn't fit for television. Fired from a newspaper for lacking imagination and having no original ideas. At age 11, he was cut from his team after being diagnosed with a growth hormone deficiency, which made him smaller in stature than most kids his age. At 30 years old, he was left devastated and depressed after being unceremoniously removed from the company he started. A high school dropout whose personal struggles with drugs and poverty culminated in an unsuccessful suicide attempt. A teacher told him he was too stupid to learn anything and that he should go into a field where he might succeed by virtue of his pleasant personality. Rejected by Decca Recording Studios, who said, "We don't like their sound. They have no future in show business." His first book was rejected by 27 publishers. His fiancée died, failed in business, had a nervous breakdown, and was defeated in 8 elections. If you've never failed, you've never tried anything new.
Hey, that's all I can say. Just get out there and try it. It works. You can support a family of 8 kids just walking down the street and asking for an appointment, okay?